The morning sun had barely crept over the horizon when Maya Johnson pushed open the heavy glass door of Pete's diner. Her left leg throbbed with each step, a constant reminder of the accident that had changed everything 3 weeks ago. She bit her lip, refusing to let the pain show on her face. Tips were already scarce enough without customers seeing her weakness. At 28 years old, she had become an expert at hiding her struggles behind a practiced smile. The diner sat on the edge of Route 47, a forgotten stretch of highway that cut through rural Tennessee. Most days brought truckers, families passing through, and the occasional lost tourist. But today was different. Maya heard them before she saw them, the deep rumble of motorcycle engines that made the diner's windows rattle in their frames. She glanced outside and felt her stomach tighten. At least 15 motorcycles pulled into the parking lot, their chrome gleaming in the early light. The riders wore black leather vests with patches she couldn't quite read from this distance. Pete emerged from the kitchen, wiping his hands on his grease-stained apron. His weathered face creased with concern. "Maya, maybe you should take your break early," he said quietly. Pete was a good man, one of the few who had given her a chance when she desperately needed work. But she could hear the worry in his voice. Small-town Tennessee wasn't always kind to people who looked like her, and a group of bikers was an unknown variable neither of them wanted to calculate. "I've got this," Maya said, straightening her uniform despite the shooting pain in her leg. She couldn't afford to lose hours, not with her daughter's medical bills piling up at home. Little Jasmine had been born premature, and even now at 5 years old, she needed regular treatments that insurance barely covered. Every dollar mattered. Every shift counted. The door swung open, and they filed in. Maya counted 17 of them, men and women, ranging from their 30s to their 60s. Their leather vests bore the name Rolling Thunder across the back, with various patches and pins decorating the front. They were loud, boisterous, filling the small diner with conversation and laughter. Maya felt every eye in the restaurant turn toward them, then toward her. She was the only server on duty. She grabbed her notepad and approached the largest table, where most of them had gathered. Her legs screamed in protest, but she kept her expression neutral. "Good morning, folks. Welcome to Pete's. Can I start you off with some coffee?" A man with a gray beard and kind eyes looked up at her. His vest indicated he was the president of the club. "Coffee would be great, sweetheart. We'll need a few minutes with the menu though. Long ride ahead of us." Maya nodded and turned to head for the coffee pot. That's when it happened. Her injured leg simply gave out. She stumbled, catching herself on a nearby chair, but not before a sharp gasp escaped her lips. The pain was blinding, white-hot, shooting from her ankle all the way up her spine. She steadied herself quickly, hoping no one had noticed. But they had. When she looked up, the gray-bearded man was watching her intently. His eyes had moved from her face down to her leg, which she now realized was visibly swollen beneath her dark pantyhose. The bruising had spread further than she thought, purple and yellow marks creeping up from her ankle. She'd been so focused on just getting through each shift that she hadn't properly examined it in days. "You all right there, miss?" he asked, his voice gentler than before. "Fine, thank you," Maya replied quickly, forcing brightness into her tone. "Just lost my footing. I'll get that coffee right away." She limped toward the kitchen, feeling their eyes following her. Her cheeks burned with embarrassment, but more than that, with fear. She couldn't afford to show weakness, couldn't afford to let anyone see how bad things really were. In her experience, sympathy was temporary, but judgment lasted forever. She'd learned that lesson the hard way, over and over again. As she poured coffee into a large carafe, her hands trembled slightly. She took a deep breath, pushing down the anxiety that threatened to overwhelm her. "Just get through the shift," she told herself. "Just make it through one more day." Maya returned with the coffee, her professional smile firmly in place despite the agony radiating through her leg. She moved from biker to biker, filling cups with practiced efficiency, ignoring the concerned glances that followed her every movement. The gray-bearded man, she'd heard someone call him Dutch, watched her with an intensity that made her uncomfortable. Not threatening, exactly, but penetrating, as if he could see straight through her carefully constructed facade. "What happened to your leg?" asked a woman with silver streaks in her long black hair. Her voice was direct but not unkind. Maya's hand stilled for just a moment over a coffee cup. "Old injury," she said lightly. "Nothing serious. Are you folks ready to order, or do you need more time?" Dutch exchanged glances with several others at the table. They seemed to be having a silent conversation, the kind that people who've ridden together for years could have without words. Maya felt the weight of their attention and wished desperately that she could simply disappear into the kitchen. She took their orders: eggs, pancakes, bacon, hash browns, the usual diner fare multiplied by 17, and retreated as quickly as her damaged leg would allow. In the kitchen, Pete was already working the grill, but he paused when he saw her face. "You need to sit down," he said firmly. "Just for a minute." "I can't," Maya whispered, checking the orders. "They're a big table." "Big table means a good tip, and I need." "I know what you need," Pete interrupted. "I also know you're going to collapse if you don't take care of yourself. When's the last time you saw a doctor about that leg?" Maya didn't answer. She couldn't tell him that she'd been to the emergency room the night of the accident, a hit and run in the diner's parking lot that had left her with a severely sprained ankle and possible fracture. She couldn't tell him that she'd left against medical advice because she couldn't afford the follow-up appointments they'd recommended. She couldn't tell him that she'd been wrapping it in old ace bandages and taking expired pain medication she'd found in her medicine cabinet. The truth was too humiliating, too raw. She loaded up a tray with plates and headed back out. The morning rush was starting, regulars filing in, taking their usual spots at the counter. Maya moved between tables like a dancer who'd forgotten the steps, her rhythm thrown off by pain and exhaustion. But she kept going, kept smiling, kept pretending that everything was fine. At the bikers' table, something strange was happening. They'd grown quieter, their boisterous energy replaced by hushed conversations. Maya noticed them glancing at her repeatedly, then leaning in to whisper to each other. Her anxiety spiked. Were they complaining about her service? Had she messed up an order? She couldn't afford to lose this job. Pete's Diner was the only place that had hired her after her last employer had let her go for missing too many days when Jasmine was sick. Dutch called her over. Maya's heart hammered as she approached. "Yes, sir? Is everything all right with your food?" "Food's perfect," he said. "Best biscuits and gravy I've had in months. But I wanted to ask you something, if you don't mind." Here it comes, Maya thought. The personal questions, the judgment, the assumptions. She braced herself. Of course. That injury. When did it happen? Maya felt her throat tighten. "About 3 weeks ago. But really, I'm managing fine." "Have you seen a doctor?" asked the silver-haired woman. "I've had it looked at," Maya said carefully, which was technically true. "It's healing." "Doesn't look like it's healing to me," said a younger biker with sleeve tattoos covering both arms. "Looks infected. That discoloration isn't normal." Maya felt tears prick at her eyes and hated herself for it. She didn't need their pity. She didn't need anyone pointing out what she already knew, that she was failing at taking care of herself, that she was one bad day away from complete collapse, that she was drowning and nobody was coming to save her. "I appreciate your concern," she said, her voice tight. "But I'm fine. Can I get anyone more coffee?" Dutch reached out and gently touched her arm. The gesture was so unexpected, so kind, that Maya almost broke down right there. "Listen," he said softly. "I don't know your story, and you don't owe me any explanations. But I've been around long enough to recognize when someone's hurting and trying to hide it. My daughter used to do the same thing, push through pain because she thought asking for help made her weak. Nearly cost her everything." Maya swallowed hard. "I really do need to check on my other tables." "Of course," Dutch said, releasing her arm. But as she turned away, she heard him say to the others, "Give me a few minutes. I need to make some calls." The rest of the shift blurred together. Maya moved on autopilot, taking orders, delivering food, clearing tables. Her leg had gone from throbbing to a constant, burning ache. She could feel something wet in her shoe and realized with horror that her wound must have reopened. Still, she kept going. She had to. Jasmine needed new nebulizer treatments. The rent was due in 5 days. Her car was making a noise that probably meant expensive repairs she couldn't afford. Stopping wasn't an option. It was nearly noon when Maya felt the world tilt sideways. She'd been carrying a tray of dishes back to the kitchen when her leg finally gave out completely. This time, there was no chair to catch herself on. She went down hard, the tray clattering to the floor, plates shattering into ceramic shrapnel across the diner's worn linoleum. The crash silenced every conversation in the room. Maya lay there for a moment, stunned by the pain and the humiliation. Through her tears, she could see her co-workers rushing toward her, could hear Pete shouting something from the kitchen. But before anyone else could reach her, Dutch was there. He moved faster than she would have thought possible for a man his age, kneeling beside her with surprising gentleness. "Don't try to move," he said firmly but kindly. "Let's see what we're dealing with here." "I'm okay," Maya insisted, trying to push herself up. "I just need a minute, I can." Stop. The word wasn't harsh, but it carried an authority that made Maya freeze. Dutch looked up at the silver-haired woman. Sarah, grab the first aid kit from my bike. Tommy, clear these people back. Give her some air. He turned back to Maya, his weathered face creased with concern. I'm not asking you if you're okay. I can see you're not. What I'm asking is for you to let us help you. Something in his voice broke through Maya's defenses. Maybe it was the exhaustion, or the pain, or the sheer weight of 3 weeks of pretending everything was fine when nothing was fine. Whatever it was, she felt herself nod. Sarah returned with a well-stocked first aid kit. Dutch carefully rolled up Maya's pant leg, and she heard several sharp intakes of breath from the bikers who had gathered around. She knew what they were seeing. Her ankle was grotesquely swollen, nearly twice its normal size. The bruising had spread in mottled purple, yellow, and green patterns. Worst of all, there was a small wound on the side of her ankle where something had torn through her skin during the accident, and it was clearly infected. Red streaks radiated outward from the injury, and fluid was seeping through the bandage she'd wrapped around it that morning. Christ, muttered Tommy, the younger biker. How have you been walking on that? Because she didn't have a choice, Sarah said quietly, meeting Maya's eyes with understanding. Did you, honey? Maya shook her head, no longer trusting herself to speak without breaking down completely. Pete had pushed through the crowd and was staring at her leg in horror. Maya, why didn't you tell me it was this bad? I would have given me time off, Maya finished for him. Which I can't afford. Pete, I'm sorry about the plates, I'll pay for them out of my tips, I just need to. You need to go to the hospital, Dutch interrupted. That infection is serious. You could lose your leg if it gets into your bloodstream. You could die. The words hung in the air. Die. Such a simple word, but hearing it out loud made something inside Maya crack wide open. She thought about Jasmine, her beautiful little girl with her crooked smile and her endless questions about the world. What would happen to Jasmine if Maya wasn't there? Her daughter's father had disappeared before she was born. Maya's own mother had passed away 2 years ago. There was no one else. Jasmine would end up in the system, bounce between foster homes, her fragile health complications making her difficult to place. I can't, Maya whispered. I can't afford the hospital. I have a daughter. I have bills. Her voice broke. I have nothing. No insurance. No savings. If I go to the hospital, I'll come out with debt I'll never escape. But if I don't work, we'll lose everything anyway. So either way, I lose. Either way, she loses. The silence that followed was deafening. Maya could feel everyone's eyes on her, could feel their pity like a physical weight. She'd spent her entire adult life trying to avoid this moment, the moment when people saw just how close to the edge she really was, how one bad day, one accident, one missed paycheck stood between her and complete ruin. Dutch sat back on his heels, studying her face. Then he stood and turned to his club members. Family meeting, he announced. Outside. Now. To Maya, he added, don't move. Sarah's going to clean that wound and stabilize your ankle. We'll be right back. Maya watched through the diner's window as the 17 bikers huddled in the parking lot. They were talking animatedly, some gesturing emphatically, others nodding or shaking their heads. She felt a mixture of confusion and dread. What were they planning? Were they going to call an ambulance? She couldn't afford an ambulance. The ride alone would cost more than she made in a month. Sarah worked gently but efficiently, cleaning the wound with antiseptic that burned like fire. I used to be a nurse, she explained as Maya gritted her teeth. Rode with an outlaw club for years before I joined Rolling Thunder. Seen plenty of injuries people tried to ignore. This is bad, honey. Real bad. But Dutch will figure something out. He always does. Why would he help me? Maya asked. You don't even know me. Sarah paused in her work and looked up, her eyes reflecting a depth of understanding that came from experience. Because we've all been where you are. Maybe not exactly the same circumstances, but we've all hit rock bottom. We've all felt like the world was against us, like there was no way out. The difference is, we found each other. We built a family from broken pieces. And real family doesn't turn away when someone's hurting. Through the window, Maya saw the huddle break up. Dutch was on his phone now, pacing back and forth, talking to someone with serious intensity. The other bikers were nodding at each other, some pulling out their own phones. Whatever they were planning, it was coordinated, purposeful. Maya felt hope flutter in her chest, dangerous and fragile as a canary in a coal mine. Dutch came back inside, and the expression on his face had changed. There was determination there now, and something else, something that looked almost like joy. "All right," he said, crouching down beside Maya again. "Here's what's going to happen." Dutch's weathered hands were steady as he knelt beside Maya, his gray eyes meeting hers with unwavering intensity. "We're taking you to the hospital. Right now. And before you start with the protests about money, you need to understand something. Rolling Thunder isn't just a motorcycle club. We're veterans. Most of us served in Iraq, Afghanistan, Vietnam. We came home to a country that didn't always know what to do with us, to bills we couldn't pay, to injuries nobody wanted to treat. We know what it's like to fall through the cracks." Maya opened her mouth to object, but Dutch held up a hand. "I've already made some calls. First, to Dr. Raymond Chen, he's a surgeon about 30 miles from here who's treated our members before. He's expecting you. Second, to our club's emergency fund. We maintain it specifically for situations like this. Third, to the VA hospital administrator who owes me a favor. Between all of that, we're going to make sure you get treatment without bankrupting yourself. But you have to let us help you." "I don't understand," Maya said, her voice breaking. "Why would you do this for me? I'm nobody to you." Sarah, who'd finished bandaging Maya's ankle, looked up sharply. "You're not nobody. You're a mother working herself to death to take care of her child. You're someone who's been dealt a rough hand and is still showing up, still trying. That makes you exactly the kind of person worth helping." Tommy, the younger biker, had been listening intently. He stepped forward now. "My mom was a single mother," he said quietly. "Worked 3 jobs to keep me and my sister fed. She got sick, tried to push through it like you're doing. By the time she finally went to the doctor, the cancer had spread too far. I was 14 when we lost her. I've spent every day since wishing someone had been there to force her to get help, to tell her that her life mattered, that she deserved to take care of herself too." Maya felt tears streaming down her face. She couldn't remember the last time anyone had shown her this kind of compassion. The world had taught her to be suspicious of kindness, to look for the angle, the catch, the hidden cost. But looking at these 17 people, these strangers who'd walked into her life just a few hours ago, she saw only genuine concern. It was overwhelming and terrifying and beautiful all at once. "My daughter," she managed to say. "Jasmine. She's at daycare. I need to pick her up by 6, and I need to make sure." "Where's the daycare?" Dutch asked, already pulling out his phone. Maya gave him the address. He immediately called someone, spoke briefly, then turned back to her. "My wife Linda is 10 minutes from there. She'll pick up Jasmine and take her to our house. Our granddaughter is about the same age, they'll have a great time together. You focus on getting yourself fixed up so you can be there for your little girl in the long run, not just today." Pete had been standing by, looking stricken. "Maya, I'm so sorry. I should have noticed. I should have made you take time off, insisted you see a doctor." "Pete's been where you are too," Dutch interrupted. "Lost his wife to medical bills about 5 years back. Isn't that right, Pete?" The diner owner nodded slowly. "Lymphoma. We caught it early, but even with insurance, the treatments, we lost everything. The house, our savings, nearly lost this place too. If some folks from the community hadn't helped us out, I don't know what would have happened." He looked at Maya with anguish in his eyes. "I recognized myself in you, kiddo. That's why I hired you without checking your references too carefully. That's why I've been giving you extra shifts. But I should have been paying closer attention to what it was costing you." Dutch stood up, addressing the entire diner now. "Here's what's going to happen. We're taking Maya to the hospital. Pete, you're going to manage without her for as long as it takes for her to heal properly. And I mean properly, not just until she can limp around again." He turned to his club members. "Sarah, you ride with me. We'll take Maya in my truck. Tommy, you coordinate getting everyone's bikes back to the clubhouse. The rest of you, I need you to reach out to our network. Let's see what we can do about Maya's other problems." "Other problems?" Maya echoed weakly. A woman named Rose, who'd been quiet until now, smiled. "Honey, an infected leg is just a symptom. We need to treat the disease, and the disease is poverty, lack of support, and a system that fails people like you every single day. So while you're getting medical treatment, we're going to work on the rest." What happened next felt like watching a military operation unfold. Dutch and Sarah helped Maya to Dutch's pickup truck, not a motorcycle as she'd expected, but a well-maintained Ford with a crew cab. Several bikers disappeared to make phone calls. Others approached Pete, talking to him intently. Maya caught fragments of conversation, cover her shifts, rent assistance, childcare network, legal aid for medical bills. As Dutch carefully helped her into the truck's passenger seat, Maya grabbed his arm. I don't know how I'll ever repay you for this. Dutch's expression softened. You don't repay kindness, Maya. You pass it on. When you're back on your feet, and you'll help someone else who needs it. That's how this works. That's how we change the world, one person at a time. The drive to the hospital took 40 minutes. Sarah sat in the back, monitoring Maya's condition, while Dutch drove with the focused intensity of someone on a mission. He told her about Rolling Thunder, about how the club had started as a group of veterans who felt invisible in civilian life. They'd found purpose in helping others, in being the support system that had failed them when they'd returned from war. We do charity rides, Sarah explained. Raise money for homeless veterans, for wounded warriors, for kids who've lost parents in combat. But sometimes the most important thing we do is this, show up for one person who needs help right now. Dr. Chen was waiting when they arrived, a small Asian man with kind eyes and efficient movements. He took one look at Maya's ankle and immediately admitted her. Cellulitis with lymphangitis, he announced. You see these red streaks? That's the infection spreading through your lymphatic system. Another few days and you could have developed sepsis. You're very lucky these folks brought you in when they did. The next several hours passed in a blur of 4 antibiotics, x-rays, and consultations. The ankle wasn't broken, which was good news, but the severe sprain combined with the infection required immediate intervention. Dr. Chen lanced and drained the wound, cleaned it thoroughly, and wrapped it in a proper medical boot. You're going to be on crutches for at least 4 weeks, he told her firmly. And I mean actually on crutches, staying off that leg, not trying to work through it. If you don't let this heal completely, you'll have chronic problems for the rest of your life. Maya lay in the hospital bed, exhausted but finally free from the constant agony that had been her companion for weeks. Dutch and Sarah had stayed with her the entire time. Now Dutch's phone buzzed, and he stepped out to take the call. Dutch returned to Maya's hospital room with an expression she couldn't quite read. Behind him came several more members of Rolling Thunder, along with a woman Maya didn't recognize. The stranger was perhaps 50 years old, professionally dressed, with warm brown eyes that immediately put Maya at ease despite her confusion. Maya, this is Jennifer Martinez, Dutch said. She's a social worker and advocate who's worked with our club before. We've filled her in on your situation. Jennifer pulled up a chair beside Maya's bed. I want to start by saying that everything we discuss is confidential, and you're under no obligation to accept any help you're not comfortable with. But Dutch and his friends have asked me to see what resources we can connect you with, and honestly, there's quite a bit available that you probably don't know about. Over the next 30 minutes, Jennifer laid out a comprehensive plan. There were emergency assistance programs Maya qualified for but had never applied to because she didn't know they existed. There was subsidized childcare that could reduce her daycare costs by half. There were medical debt negotiation services that could work with the hospital to drastically reduce what she'd owe. There was even a program that helped single mothers access better housing in safer neighborhoods. But here's the thing, Jennifer said gently. To access most of these programs, you need time. Time to fill out applications, attend appointments, gather documentation. You can't do that while working yourself to death at the diner. I can't not work, Maya protested. The rent is due in 5 days. I have bills. Taken care of, said Rose, stepping forward. She handed Maya an envelope. This is from the club's emergency fund. It's enough to cover 2 months of rent and utilities. That gives you time to heal, to get Jasmine's medical situation stabilized, and to get connected with these longer-term resources. Maya opened the envelope with shaking hands. Inside was a check for $3,000. She stared at it, unable to process what she was seeing. I can't accept this, she whispered. It's too much. I don't deserve. Stop right there, Sarah interrupted firmly. You think you don't deserve help because you've been conditioned by a cruel system to believe that struggling is somehow noble, that asking for help is weakness. But strength isn't suffering in silence, Maya. Strength is accepting help when you need it so you can become strong enough to help others later. Tommy spoke up. My mom didn't accept help. She thought she had to do everything alone. And she died because of it, leaving me and my sister orphaned. Don't do that to Jasmine. Don't let pride kill you when people are literally standing here begging to help. Dutch pulled up a chair on the other side of Maya's bed. I told you earlier that you'd pay this forward someday. Let me tell you what I mean. 5 years from now, when you're stable and Jasmine is healthy and you're not drowning anymore, someone else is going to cross your path. Someone who's exactly where you are right now. And you're going to remember this moment. You're going to remember what it felt like to be seen, to be helped, to be treated like you matter. And you're going to do for them what we're doing for you. That's the payment. That's the debt. Not to us, but to the next person who needs what you needed. Maya couldn't hold back her tears anymore. She sobbed, deep, wrenching sobs that came from a place of exhaustion and relief and gratitude so profound it hurt. Sarah held one of her hands. Rose held the other. These strangers who'd become something more in the span of a few hours surrounded her with a kind of love she'd forgotten existed in the world. "There's more," Dutch said when her crying had subsided to hiccups. "Pete called while we were in with the doctor. He wants you to know your job is secure, but he doesn't want you back until you're genuinely healed. He's hired a temporary server to cover your shifts. And when you do come back, he's giving you a raise and putting you on a better schedule, one that doesn't have you working yourself to death." Jennifer added, "I've also been in touch with Jasmine's medical team. There are some programs through the Children's Hospital that can help with her ongoing treatments. We have an appointment set up for next week to discuss options. You won't be doing this alone anymore." As the evening wore on, more details emerged. The bikers had set up a meal train, ensuring Maya would have food delivered for the next month. They'd arranged for transportation to medical appointments. They'd even contacted a lawyer friend who was willing to work pro bono on resolving some old debts that had been haunting Maya's credit report. But perhaps most surprisingly, Dutch's wife Linda arrived with Jasmine. The little girl burst into the hospital room, her face lighting up when she saw her mother. "Mama, Miss Linda has a puppy. And we made cookies. And she says I can come play again tomorrow." Maya hugged her daughter tight, breathing in the familiar scent of her strawberry shampoo. Over Jasmine's head, she mouthed thank you to Linda, who waved it off with a smile. "She's a delight," Linda said. "Smart as a whip. We had a great time." Dr. Chen released Maya that evening with strict instructions, a prescription for antibiotics, and a follow-up appointment already scheduled. Dutch drove her and Jasmine home, to an apartment Maya had been ashamed to let anyone see, with its peeling wallpaper and drafty windows. But Dutch didn't judge. He helped her inside, made sure she had everything she needed, and left his phone number on the kitchen table. "You call if you need anything," he said. "And I mean anything. 3 in the morning, doesn't matter. You're part of the family now." After he left, Maya sat on her worn couch with Jasmine snuggled beside her, her leg properly elevated and for the first time in weeks, not screaming in agony. She looked around her small apartment and saw it differently now. Not as a prison of poverty, but as a starting point. A place from which she could actually build something better, now that she wasn't doing it entirely alone. Jasmine looked up at her with those big brown eyes. "Mama, why are you crying?" "Because I'm happy, baby," Maya said, and realized it was true. "Because some very good people helped us today. Like angels." Maya thought about the bikers with their leather and tattoos, their rough appearances that hid the most generous hearts she'd ever encountered. "Yes," she said. "Exactly like angels." 3 weeks later, Maya returned to Pete's diner for a visit. She was still on crutches, but the infection was gone, and her ankle was healing properly. The diner erupted in applause when she walked in. Pete had framed the check from Rolling Thunder on the wall behind the counter, with a plaque that read, "Sometimes angels ride motorcycles." Dutch and several club members were there, having timed their route to coincide with her visit. He pulled her into a gentle hug. "How are you doing?" "Better," Maya said, and meant it. "Jennifer helped me get into a new apartment, nothing fancy, but it's in a better neighborhood and the rent's actually lower. Jasmine's enrolled in a better daycare program. And I've been volunteering at the VA hospital, helping other people navigate the social services system." "Already paying it forward," Dutch said with approval. "That's my girl." Maya pulled an envelope from her purse. "I wanted to give this to you. It's not much, just $200, but it's the start of paying back what you gave me." Dutch didn't take the envelope. Instead, he closed her hands around it. "Donate it to our emergency fund if you want. But you don't owe us repayment, Maya. What you owe is to never forget that you're worthy of help, that asking for support isn't weakness, and that there are good people in this world who will show up when you need them most. You teach Jasmine that. You live that truth. That's the payment." As Maya sat in her favorite booth, surrounded by friends old and new, watching Jasmine color with Linda in the corner, she felt something she hadn't experienced in years: hope. Real, solid hope that the future could be different, that she wasn't doomed to drown in an endless cycle of poverty and pain. The world hadn't suddenly become fair. She still faced challenges. But she no longer faced them alone. And that made all the difference. Outside, the motorcycles gleamed in the afternoon sun, their chrome reflecting light like beacons. Rolling Thunder would ride out soon, heading toward their next destination, their next purpose. But they'd leave behind something precious, proof that kindness isn't weakness, that community matters, and that sometimes the people who look the most intimidating are the ones with the biggest hearts. Maya watched them prepare to leave, Dutch organizing his crew with the precision of the military officer he'd once been. Before he mounted his bike, he caught her eye through the window and gave her a salute. She saluted back, this waitress who'd learned that salvation sometimes comes on two wheels, wearing leather, and refusing to accept that anyone should suffer alone. As the engines roared to life and Rolling Thunder pulled out of the parking lot, heading toward whatever highway called them next, Maya made herself a promise. She would heal. She would build a better life for Jasmine. And someday, when someone else was drowning, when someone else was limping through their life pretending everything was fine while falling apart, she would be the one to see them. She would be the one to help. Because that's what you do when someone saves your life. You learn to save others. And the ripples of kindness go on forever.